We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down.
A shocking sight on a snowy Toronto runway. A plane on its roof. Passengers injured but alive.
Drop it! Come on!
The moment of impact and the fast and frantic evacuation. Frigid conditions with strong winds.
It could become a problem.
We break down why the wings coming apart actually may have saved lives. And what it was like on board as the plane rolled.
The 1 minute you're landing, kind of waiting to see your friends and your people, and the next minute you're physically upside down.
Adrian's exclusive interview. Buried under back-to-back storms.
It's going to be a huge challenge.
Parts of central Canada slammed with more than 70 centimetres.
It's a little overwhelming.
The cleanup that could take weeks. Canadian pride on and off the ice.
People are really into being Canadian right now.
Team Canada now set to face the U.S. Winner take all.
From CBC News, this is The National with Erica Johnson.
Thanks for joining us. We are following breaking news tonight. At least 3 people seriously injured after a plane flipped over on landing at Toronto's Pearson Airport. One of them, we know, is a child. The images of the plane itself are stunning. This is it after the crash, upside down on the tarmac as the scramble was underway to get everybody out. Incredibly, thankfully, no one was killed. The Delta plane had just flown in from Minneapolis with 80 people on board. At least 17 have been taken to hospital. Thomas Dagla is at Toronto Pearson Airport. Thomas, a major investigation now underway there.
Yeah, on this bitterly cold night, Erica, the Transportation Safety Board has taken over the investigation into what went wrong on the runway here. They will get some help from their U.S. counterparts, the U.S. NTSB taking part as well, since this was a crash involving a U.S.-based airline. All of it leading to a lot of confusion and disruption and some terrifying moments for those on board and those watching on.
We just landed. Our plane crashed.
With their plane upside down on the tarmac, amazingly, most passengers managed to walk away unharmed, wearing whatever they had on for their Delta Airlines flight from Minneapolis as crews doused the fuselage in the freezing cold.
Everything, drop it! Come on!
Passengers had to crawl on the plane's roof to get out, encountering snow on the runway after a harrowing landing. This woman posting video while upside down, then getting out in a daze.
I was just in a plane crash. Oh my God.
543 ground runway 24 right, data altimeter 2993. Standby. This airplane just crashed at 23.
It was routine, but it was noticeable that the runways were kind of in a weird condition. And when we hit, it was just a super hard, hit the ground. And the plane went sideways.
You know, it's just at least a real experience, and I was just in shock, and I was like, you know, did I just see what I just saw, right? So, yeah, it was just unbelievable.
Taylor Lundquist had come to pick up a friend on that flight.
You just said that it bounced when it landed, and then it was upside down.
That Bombardier CRJ-900 carrying 80 passengers and crew faced gusty winds as it descended. Exactly what happened in the flight's final seconds isn't clear.
I could see that it just struggled just before landing, and I think it just, because of the high winds, it just flipped.
Officials closed all Pearson runways for hours, diverting flights elsewhere for much of the afternoon.
We can now confirm that 18 injured passengers have been transported to the local area hospitals.
Officials providing only a brief update and taking no questions about an incident that's left many wondering what happened.
Quite incredible. Thomas, what more do we know about the injured?
At least 3 had to be airlifted here to area hospitals, including one child who who had to be taken to a downtown children's hospital here in Toronto. The number of injured has fluctuated throughout the day, with at least one patient taken to hospital this evening. And you heard Pearson's fire chief there saying 18 is the latest number of passengers and others taken to hospital after this crash landing. But we keep highlighting it because it is extraordinary after those pictures you've seen. No one has died here, Erica.
Okay, thanks for this, Thomas. Thomas Degla at Pearson Airport tonight. The investigation into the cause of this crash is now just getting underway. Ellen Morrow takes a look at what's standing out so far to some who know the aviation industry well.
I was just in a plane crash. Oh my God.
How could this happen? The daunting question now facing investigators. As they work to determine the cause of the crash, much is being made of the weather, with wind gusts of up to 65 kilometers an hour and blowing snow reported at Pearson International at the time the plane was landing.
If those gusts exceed the crosswind landing capabilities of the airplane, they don't have a lot of choice but to try to go around. And if they're too close to the ground, they can't even do that.
Questions, too, about how slippery the runway may have been after a weekend winter storm.
If you mix in a slippery runway and a strong crosswind, it could become a problem. And I suspect that might have been a factor here.
Oh my God.
There will be clues and images of the crash, the smoking but intact fuselage, and that broken wing. If it didn't snap off, aviation experts say this could all have been so much worse.
That fuel is either in the wing tanks, and if the wings were ripped off, the fuel basically was separated from the aircraft.
Once the aircraft starts rolling like that, if these wings don't break off, it tears that fuselage in half and causes fatalities.
Pearson CEO commended airport staff.
Airport emergency workers mounted a textbook response, reaching the site within minutes and quickly evacuating the passengers.
The crash is reminiscent of this day in 2005, an Air France jet skidding off a Pearson runway, landing during a powerful thunderstorm. Like this latest incident, everyone on board evacuated safely with some serious injuries.
Mother Nature is always a big factor in what we do, and we try to mitigate those risks as much as we can, but surprises still exist.
Despite all those concerns raised about the weather, the fire chief for Pearson Airport in an evening update said the runway was dry at the time of the crash and that there were no crosswind conditions. An investigation is underway, being led by the Transportation Safety Board. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Mississauga.
Let's turn now to CBC News meteorologist Chris Potter. Chris, give us an idea of the weather conditions Toronto's airport was dealing with leading up to and during the crash.
You almost have to, Erica, rewind the tape to this past weekend. Obviously, we had a snowstorm. It encompassed all the forecast region, including the GTA, obviously including Pearson Airport. And that dropped 25 centimeters of snow when you combine Saturday and Sunday. And you combine that with what we saw last week, about 26 centimeters. This past 5 days, we've had more snow than the entire month of December and January combined. And with that snow from our system, as it cleared, we got into very strong westerly winds. And this tends to happen when it comes to a departing storm system, now off into Atlantic Canada. So with these strong westerly winds, it's picking up moisture off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. So lake effect snow, although not targeting the Toronto Pearson Airport, it does look like a couple of bursts of snow did make it through. But it's really the winds that made a significant issue. Sustained winds were about 50 kilometers an hour, Erica, but wind gusts during the time of the crash were closer to 70 kilometers an hour.
Okay, clearly a lot going on. Thanks for this, Chris Potter, our CBC News meteorologist. As you heard, for more than 3 hours, the Toronto airport's runways were effectively shut down. Flights caught in the air at the time were diverted, many to their point of origin or airports in the U.S. But in Canada, many were sent to Montreal and to Ottawa, a handful to Hamilton, Ontario, and some as far away as Winnipeg. Nicole Williams is at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. Nicole, the runway closures today are still disrupting travel.
That's right, Erica. It has been a truly chaotic week for air passengers here. Today, as you mentioned, we saw dozens of flights redirected to other airports in this country and further, and that is on top of the hundreds of flights that were either delayed or canceled outright because of this plane crash. Now, as we heard, this is already on top of what has been a really brutal week for air passengers, and that is because of those two major snowstorms we saw throughout the last 5 days. Many of those flights throughout the week canceled because of how much snow and wind was gusting through Ontario. And so we saw hundreds of flights throughout the last 7 days grounded, as well as far as New York, Washington, even Cuba, and airports were already trying to deal with that backlog. So today, throughout the airport, we could see many passengers lining up at customer service desks, even more people on the phones trying to figure out alternative travel plans as their current routes were thrown into a lurch. And you could really hear the exhaustion and the frustration of people having to yet again find their travel plans disrupted. And that wasn't just here, it was at airports across this country.
Started in Vancouver, heading to Toronto. Flight was turned around back to Vancouver, rebooked to Winnipeg and then to Toronto, and now have been delayed once again in Winnipeg going to Toronto.
Started my trip yesterday, 8 o'clock. Everything canceled because of the weather. Luggage was lost. Luggage was not. Million messages coming through saying, oh, it's here, it's there, it's over there. And now we're here again. We have no flight, and unfortunate accident on the runway, but yeah.
Now, with those two runways still closed, airport authorities are suggesting, people still need to expect delays. However, most operations have resumed. That being said, look at your flight status before you head to the airport.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. We have a lot more for you from the crash at Pearson, including Adrian's exclusive interview with a passenger who was on board.
So, Pete, it's really good to see you. I cannot believe I'm sitting across from someone who's just survived a plane crash. Can you help me understand what happened?
Yeah, it feels equally good to be sitting here, obviously. But we a little disoriented on time. 6 hours ago, we're coming into land, and there had been comment early in the flight about strong winds. And as we made our descent and made touchdown, it was just a very forceful event where all of a sudden everything just kind of went sideways. And then next thing I know is kind of a blink and I'm upside down, still strapped in.
You can see this full conversation in about 20 minutes. Of course, the ice and snow at Pearson, part of those back-to-back winter storms that buried Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces under a blanket of snow. As Vanessa Lee tells us, it could take more than a week to clear it away.
The snow has tapered off, but it was another miserable day, with Montrealers digging out in punishing winds and frigid temperatures. For the second time in 4 days, schools and daycares were closed. The city struggling under the weight of 74 centimeters of snow since Thursday.
When you actually look at the 4-day total for Montreal, that is the highest 4-day total we have on record, and that is since 1941.
City officials say it will take longer than usual to clear 11,000 kilometers of streets and sidewalks.
We have 3,000 employees, 2,500 trucks on the road.
After also being blanketed with heavy snow from back-to-back storms, Toronto says clearing it all could take up to 3 weeks. More snow fell in the past week than what the city saw all last winter.
Why does it take so long to actually remove snow? Plowing snow on a 1 kilometer local residential road takes approximately 5 to 10 minutes. And that's a vehicle traveling at about 15 kilometers an hour.
Despite being hit with 2 snowstorms, Winterlude wrapped up in Ottawa on Monday with what organizers say could be its most attended season yet.
I wanted to come here yesterday, but I couldn't. There was no way you could go anywhere. So today is a perfect day.
Strong winds caused thousands to wake up without power on this holiday Monday in Atlantic Canada. This was perhaps the most enjoyable way to get around when snow turned into freezing rain.
Chopping away at the snow, which has got very icy on top. My snowblower will not work.
Back here in Montreal, authorities are urging people to stay off the streets so crews can clear all of this snow and things can get back to normal. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
Kentucky's governor says catastrophic flooding has now claimed at least 11 lives in his state, and more severe weather is on the way. This is what the weekend rainstorm left behind: homes swamped, cars underwater, and mud everywhere.
This is one of the most serious weather events we've dealt with in at least a decade.
At least 1,000 people had to be rescued. Hundreds of roads remain inaccessible due to water and mudslides, and thousands of homes left without safe drinking water. Officials warn the number of dead in this storm could still rise.
So we know about some that we've lost and some that we needed to get to the hospital. As the waters come down, KSP and others are going to be going door to door in the hardest hit communities, checking on our people.
Adding to the urgency, more severe weather is coming. Heavy snow could hit parts of the state starting Tuesday. Tonight, candidates have passed the final hurdle in their quest to become the next Liberal leader and automatically the next Prime Minister, at least until the next election. The final shape of the race is now clear. And as Ashley Burke shows us, it's still a full field.
Who is ready?
Liberal leadership contender Mark Carney bringing in big crowds and big money.
We are going to build our future.
His campaign says he's raised nearly $2 million.
I find it very energizing and empowering. I mean, it's a privilege to go across the country and talk with Canadians.
Carney's one of 5 contenders who have now paid the $350,000 entrance fee to stay in the race to become the next Liberal leader.
I have to say that it was a high fee, but we've got momentum across the country.
The high entrance fee to keep the pool of contenders low as Donald Trump's tariff threat dominates the race.
The most important thing for Americans to understand is this is an act of huge self-mutilation.
I am committed to helping our artists. I'm committed to our art.
Frank Bayless doesn't have the name recognition of other candidates. He's making videos to try and change that and pitching himself as the one to take on Trump as a businessman.
I've run into the Trump super aggressive, super bullying type of business person. I know how to deal with him. It's not new to me. I'm not going to be learning on the job, and I'm not going to be making a number of, quite frankly, rookie mistakes that are being made right now.
He's the only candidate from Quebec in the race. Ruby Dalla wants to become the first woman to lead the party, but her lack of French skills could hold her back in the upcoming debates.
I do not want the fact that I am not fully bilingual at this particular time, even though I speak 4 other languages. I do not want that, to be preventative from French Canadians hearing of my vision and speaking of my message.
Ruby Dalla asked the Liberal Party if she could have a translator at the French debate in Montreal next week. The party denied her request, so for now, her plan is to give her opening remarks in French and then stay on stage to answer what she can. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Amid that national Liberal leadership campaign, Ontario's provincial election is fast approaching. And tonight, leaders clashed on the CBC broadcast centre stage in a final debate.
I will work harder than I've ever worked. I will fight against Donald Trump like you've never seen before.
We'll get the basics right. I'll ensure you have a family doctor.
Stop the privatization of healthcare. Invest in rural hospitals.
You don't have to settle for this. You have the power to change things. And I want to offer you that hope.
NDP leader Merritt Stiles, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, and the Green Party's Mike Schreiner focused their attacks on the front runner, Progressive Conservative leader Doug Ford.
I'd like you to tell the people at home who lost loved ones while they were on the wait list what you did over the past 7 years to fix our healthcare system, because it's broken. We're in crisis.
Can you explain to people?
We got 10 seconds.
We'll use a credit card. We'll use your OHIP card. That's what we're going to do.
Private medicine. That's what you want to take us to. Private medicine.
Ontario goes to the polls on February 27th. European leaders raced to Paris today, facing growing concerns they could be sidelined as the Trump administration pushes ahead with Russia to end the war in Ukraine. As Cameron McIntosh explains, it comes as U.S. officials prepare to meet with their Russian counterparts.
An emergency meeting of Europe's leaders, trying not to be sidelined. French President Emmanuel Macron calling leaders to Paris to determine what role Europe should have in securing peace in Ukraine.
At stake is not just the future of Ukraine, it is an existential question for Europe as a whole.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is floating the idea of Europe's biggest countries leading a peacekeeping force in Ukraine, though nothing is set. It comes in response to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio traveling to Saudi Arabia, attempting to set up negotiations on Ukraine with Russian officials.
We're just not there yet. We really aren't. But hopefully we will be, because we'd all like to see this war end.
A similar line from Russian officials as they touched down, telling Russian media these were serious talks.
Ukraine will never accept deals made behind our backs without our involvement.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine won't recognize the meeting. NATO membership for Ukraine, whether Russia keeps any of its occupied territory, about 6 million people, stand as critical issues, along with how involved the U.S. remains.
Trump's hard-nosed approach has hastened Europe accepting its own defense burdens.
All with implications for Europe's security along its Russian border.
There will be some very significant alarm in European capitals about what might be discussed with regards to the security of their continent, their home region.
If it all leads to negotiations, President Trump says Ukraine and Europe will be at the table.
We're trying to get a peace with Russia, Ukraine, and we're working very hard on it.
The president, who promised to end the war quickly, now trying to lay the groundwork for a deal that could reshape security across Europe. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Washington.
Now back to our top story. A shocking crash ends in a plane upside down.
It just flipped at the moment just before landing.
We'll hear what it was like inside that plane as it hit the runway. Tesla owners seeing backlash.
Oh, hell yeah, you get a lot of attention, that's for sure.
Are Elon Musk's politics turning off customers? And Canada makes it to the Four Nations finals to face off with America once again. We're back in 2. As Canadian and American politicians exchange threats, the country's men's hockey teams will battle it out on the ice again. As Julia Wong shows us, Team Canada is headed to the Four Nations finals. And for many fans, it's about more than just hockey.
Team Canada left it all on the ice during a showdown against Finland, pulling off a 5-3 victory and setting up a rematch against the United States in the Four Nations final.
I think Canada will win. It'll be tough, but they're going to win.
It's no secret things are tense between the North American neighbors. At Monday's game in Boston, with glowing hearts, light jeers during the singing of O Canada. With U.S. President Donald Trump's escalating threats of trade tariffs and making Canada the 51st American state, hockey fans say Thursday's game will be different than a normal matchup.
There's already so much tension building between the two, so I feel like it's going to be such a good game to watch.
There's no denying the final will feel personal for some. National pride is at stake and on display.
I wear it all the time. Anytime there's some sort of national event, like even with the World Cup soccer, we open up early, and people are really into being Canadian right now.
This sports analyst says hockey can be an analogy for life.
It's an opportunity for Canada to, to stick it to the U.S. in some ways without actually really sticking it to them. I mean, it's a sports game that at the end of the day, it's sports. It doesn't matter, but it feels like it does.
For the team, the focus is simple.
Like, even if the U.S. wasn't in the final, we wouldn't be like, we don't want to be in. We want in this. And we came here for this purpose. And now it's win one more game.
We feel like we could beat those guys, and we plan on playing a little better Thursday.
And perhaps an opportunity to settle some differences off the ice.
Maybe the best way to talk about foreign policy is to beat them in hockey.
That patriotism will be put to the test during the final Thursday night. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Next, a frightening situation after a plane lands on its roof.
Next thing I know is kind of a blink and I'm upside down.
Adrian gets an exclusive first-hand account of what it was like inside that plane. A growing tide of opposition to Elon Musk is dividing Tesla owners. While the world's richest man works in the Trump administration, some are protesting at dealerships, even vandalizing them. As Sarah Levitt found out, some Tesla drivers feel caught in Musk's contentious spotlight.
I bought this before Elon went crazy.
Bob Porter loves his Tesla, but recently added a new accessory, a sticker clarifying his stance.
Emotions are running high, so of course people are looking at Tesla owners like we are all part of his club, and it's not true.
The club he's talking about is that of Elon Musk. The world's richest man owes much of his wealth to founding Tesla and SpaceX. But he's been in the news a lot lately for his prominent role in U.S. President Donald Trump's new administration. A role Musk started by making a hand gesture at Trump's inauguration, many said appeared to be a Nazi salute. Crowds of people opposed to Musk's politics protested outside Tesla dealerships across the U.S. over the weekend. There's also been vandalism, like outside this store in Vancouver, something police are investigating. Some Tesla owners, like singer Sheryl Crow, are waving goodbye to their cars entirely. There comes a time when you have to decide who you are willing to align with. So long, Tesla. Not everybody agrees.
Oh, hell yeah. You get a lot of attention, that's for sure.
Caesar Cerny is a proud owner of a Cybertruck and says he knows just how polarizing the vehicle can be, and even more so now. But he didn't buy it as a political statement.
I like technology. I work in tech. I support tech, and I think this is the future.
At the Canadian International Auto Show, Tesla's showcase attracts both the curious and the hardcore fans.
I am a huge Elon Musk fan, a huge Tesla fan, and that's changed my opinion not even one little bit.
He's such a modern thinker and stuff. I think he's got a lot of good to bring to the world.
Whether fans or not, Tesla drivers say they feel the hostility on the road, something unlikely to change in the current political climate. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Now we go deeper into the stories shaping our world. The eyes of the world on Toronto's airport as people wonder, how does a plane end up upside down? The flight from Minneapolis crashed with 80 on board, 18 people injured, including a child badly hurt. Pete Carlson was on that flight, sitting in a window seat, 10D. He has a few cuts and bruises, but is otherwise okay. So he sat down exclusively tonight with Adrian, just a few hours after the crash.
So Pete, it's really good to see you. I cannot believe I'm sitting across from someone who's just survived a plane crash. Can you help me understand what happened?
Yeah, it feels equally good to be sitting here, obviously. But we a little disoriented on time. 6 hours ago, we're coming into land, and there had been comment early in the flight about strong winds. And as we made our descent and made touchdown, it was just a very forceful event where all of a sudden everything just kind of went sideways. And then next thing I know is kind of a blink and I'm upside down, still strapped in.
Do you remember what it sounded like? Do you remember if you flipped over like this or front end?
I believe it was kind of lateral or side roll based on kind of what we saw when we got out, but again, very disorienting to, the 1 minute you're landing, kind of waiting to see your friends and your people, and the next minute you're physically upside down and just really turned around. But it sounded, it was just cement and metal,
No time to be scared?
Oh yeah, plenty of time, yeah. I think the absolute initial feeling is just need to get out of this. And so made sense of kind of where we were and being upside down, and took my seatbelt off, which I had obviously left fastened for the landing. And as I took it off, crashed down onto the ceiling, which had become the floor because we were upside down.
So were people quiet? Were they yelling? What was happening?
I wouldn't call it quiet or yelling. Everyone was just, what I saw was everyone on that plane suddenly became very close in terms of how to help one another, how to console one another, and that was powerful. But yeah, there was definite, what now? Who's leading? How do we find ourselves away from this?
Could you tell if people were okay? I mean, I see you've got a cut here. You also have one.
Yeah, a little balder than I was this morning. I'm okay. Not really sure when this happened, whether it was during the landing. I believe it was. But yes, everyone seemed kind of physically, and that's what we did. You could see kind of row by row or area by area, people were checking one another out, making decisions about whether we would help one another with their straps, or if by doing that, would they be landing on somebody else? There was one woman in the row behind me who was under the seats, which was very hard to see. And then there was a young boy and his mother sitting on the floor, on the ceiling on the floor. And so my fatherly instinct and background as a paramedic kind of kicked in. And so I was paying the most attention, I guess, to those two people.
So what does that mean? Were they physically hurt, or were you just trying to get them off the plane?
Trying to get them off the plane. Yeah, I wasn't in a position to assess necessarily injury. Both were moving fine, but very scared, in particular the woman beneath the seats. And then it was kind of a look around of where is an exit, you can listen to the pre-flight all you want, but when you're suddenly upside down, rolled over, everything kind of goes out the door. So my attention was about 30% towards who is moving us out, and then how can I help promote flow in that direction.
Do you think that was all your paramedic training just kicking in there? Like the passenger part of you was pushed aside for the paramedic part of you?
No, I definitely had a lot of passenger part. I think I had a healthy amount of paramedic, as we'd call it, in terms of helping, help this woman out from under the chair. Had to really kind of forcefully, lift/drag. But a very human component turned on when we could smell the gas, and then we looked over and the windows were there was just liquid pouring over the small windows, and suddenly it smelled very strong of what I heard people later call AV gas.
Well, you probably know this, but I mean, even as you sit here, I can smell the gas on you. You can too, right?
Yeah, ready for a shower. But so I think there was paramedic of help move, and then as a father, I saw this boy and mom who were just, everyone seemed not oddly calm, but everyone seemed like they were there to make sure we helped each other and moved out of harm's way. So
you climb out of the plane. The plane's upside down, so you get onto the tarmac, and then what happens?
Yeah, so was able to help free and slide our friend and mom, kid first, and then a gentleman who I believe was like a off-duty airline person was next to me. We all made our way kind of, 6 to 8 feet, and then climbed out. And it felt like I was stepping onto the tundra, first of all. It was just snow just kind of blowing, and couldn't really see structures anywhere. So I didn't care how cold it was. I didn't care how far I had to walk, how long I had to stand. All of us wanted to just be out of the aircraft.
And were you walking, at this point, had the wings snapped off?
I believe so.
Could you tell?
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing. There was a wing there before, and when we went out that exit, there was no wing to be found. And so once we got back to a safe distance and kind of checked one another, because there's so much adrenaline and stress, that's when I kind of took, what's the word I'm looking for? Evaluated the scenario, realized that there was no wing on that side. And the goal was really to get further and further away from the risk. And then we heard a small, I guess I don't really know size of explosions, but we heard an explosion as the fire department was doing, their efforts to extinguish any risk. So
what was the explosion?
I don't know. It was. We were far enough away as a group. I think there were 75 or 80 of us on the flight, and suddenly that happened. I've not looked at news or anything to know if that exists to date or on media, but there was a sizable explosion, and then by that point there was a fire truck driving towards us on the tarmac, and so we all kind of gathered and took refuge behind that and looked from afar.
Sounds like this is all coming at you in sort of like movie images in a way.
Yeah, my priorities have been pretty simple since that event, which is communication with wife and children, family, friends, even some colleagues, and just really trying to just kind of a pinch me day, like.
No kidding. You're here for a paramedics conference.
Yeah.
You had paramedic friends who were picking you up, and I know they were tracking the plane and then saw this huge plume of smoke and asked you, I think they texted you, like, are you okay? Are you down? What did you say? Do you remember how you responded?
I responded when we stopped. The woman and I had been walking together that I had kind of aided in getting out, and I took my coat off and I had to grab my phones out of there before I put my coat onto her. And while having my phone, it was just not a big phone guy, and I don't even have social media, but part of me was like, I want to remember this. This may be good for me. And so I took a photograph of it and simply sent it, saying, this is my reality right now. So and then
down, but I'm on the tarmac.
Down on the tarmac and alive, which is again really amazing.
It is. And then your friend who came to get you found his way to the tarmac and started treating people as well. Right?
Yeah. So the paramedic arrival and along with police and fire was just amazing. I mean, they quickly put those of us that were injured with any sort of blood or sign of trauma onto a single bus. Moved us safe distance away and started to triage and really assess people's severity of injury or ailment. And there was Chief Mike Nolan, who jumped right in and really assisted. And the groups, the paramedics in particular, went from helping kind of what is bleeding to in time, once they got everyone moved to the appropriate sites of care, they just listened and they asked the right questions. And that was, I think, the most powerful part of today was there was just people, no countries, no nothing. It was just people together helping each other.
You got to go look after yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for taking time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, what could have led to that crash?
We have a plane that was going 120 miles an hour that hit the ground, that hit the earth, rolled, sheared off its wings, sheared off its tail, came to rest on its top, and we are having all those people leave that aircraft.
We get more insights from a commercial pilot next.
I was just in a plane crash. Oh my God.
Many people still reeling tonight from the ordeal of a crash landing at Pearson Airport. Many more asking how it could have happened. The airport fire chief has now said the runway was dry and there were no crosswinds. But some experts are pointing to winds as a potential factor. So let's get a deeper perspective. Okay, let's bring in pilot Joshua Sherrard to get a sense of what the crew on that Delta flight was dealing with. He's in Houston. Joshua, I think for many of us, the first question we have is just how a passenger jet could flip like this.
Yeah, well, we only have a limited amount of information that we know right now. What we do know is that it looks like the initial approach and even the final moments of that approach looked fairly normal. The granular data that we have from the ADSB shows that it looked like a fairly standard approach. Speed was good. Our vertical descent was well within normal parameters, and our altitude was also good. So that tells me that it doesn't look like there was any big issues prior to crossing the threshold. What we do know is that we had a very windy day up there in Toronto, and especially a lot of that wind was coming from a kind of a 45-degree headwind. So we had a big crosswind component. Now, this isn't necessarily abnormal, and pilots do this all the time, but the other component that we're looking at is a lot of snow and ice on the ground. And snow and ice in an airplane works a lot like the same way it does in a car. I actually just came in from Aspen this morning, and there wasn't nearly as much snow and ice on the ground, but we were sliding around on the taxiway. So I think what we're looking at here is a lot of that crosswind component coupled with some snow and some ice and a lot of factors that just unfortunately came together all at the wrong time to cause this accident.
All right, and obviously the investigation is yet to begin, really. But you have said that in a case like this, there's the initial crash and then the secondary crash. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so when we talk about collisions in any kind of vehicles, airplanes or cars are the same way. The initial crash, that primary collision, happens when that vehicle strikes another object, in this case, the ground, or in the case of your car, another vehicle. That causes, the initial momentum to stop and the initial inertia to keep going. What we have and what can be more dangerous are secondary collisions, things flying around inside that object or inside that vehicle. It could be people, it could be other objects that aren't strapped down that are still traveling at that 120 miles an hour even after the collision, that can cause even further damage and further casualties. What we see here, and I know it sounds fairly contradictory, but people should look at the pictures and the videos of this aircraft sitting upside down and realize how safe air travel is. We have a plane that was going 120 miles an hour that hit the ground, that hit the earth, rolled, sheared off its wings, sheared off its tail, came to rest on its top, and we are having all those people leave that aircraft. It really is an engineering marvel, and that comes down to the design factors, how the seats are configured so that they stay with the fuselage and don't cause those secondary collisions. And the way that the aircraft is designed to break apart like that, designed to have crumple zones, just like you would in your car to absorb that impact so that it keeps that fuselage intact, protects those inside.
So stunning footage that we've been seeing all day, and you're saying that actually it happened as it was supposed to. What do you make of the fact that this crash, miraculously resulted in no fatalities and only over about a dozen people injured?
I think that's once again a testament to the engineering and design of the aircraft itself, but further is the professionalism, efficiency, and training of the crew. We look at flight attendants and cabin crew, and unfortunately as passengers, a lot of times we look at them as the people that get my drinks and my snacks in my flight. But these people, these crew attend weeks and weeks and weeks of intense training. And I guarantee you that training is not how to take your drink order. They go through every emergency contingency that can be thought of, and they perform it in a controlled environment so that when something like this happens, something so abnormal as a plane ending up on its roof, they know how to act. And I guarantee that the survivability of this particular accident was due in no small part to the professionalism and efficiency and the actions of that cabin crew, those flight attendants that were able to get people out of that aircraft safely.
Okay, well, Joshua, the focus now will be on the investigation. Walk us through what happens next.
So what we're going to see is of course, the American NTSB and FAA come in and work with the Canadian Transportation Safety Bureau as well to start this investigation. What they're going to want to look at is not only the conditions of the weather and airport at the time, but if there were any other contributing factors. Were there any other mechanical issues with the aircraft that could have caused this loss of control? They're going to look at black box data, CVR, the cockpit voice recorder. What data did the pilots have available to them as far as wind or braking action reports on the runway? What did they know as far as runway conditions were concerned? They want to know exactly what data was available to them, and then what was going on with the aircraft prior to this crash. That, coupled with the current environmental conditions, the winds, the ice and snow on the runway, to really get a big picture as to what happened in the seconds leading up and seconds after touchdown. When we, as an aviation industry and aviation professionals, when we look at something like this, when we turn on our TV and we see a crash like this, the first thing we ask ourselves is, how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? What can I do on my next flight? I have to fly tomorrow. So I'm wondering, hey, is there something that we can learn right now to make sure that if I go into a place that's snowy, that's icy, that's windy, is there something I can do, something I can learn right now so that doesn't happen again? And then furthermore, at the conclusion of the investigation, what can we do as an industry, as a profession, to move forward and make sure that we can keep this from happening in the future?
All right, so many questions yet to be answered. We appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for this. Joshua Sherrard.
Thanks for having me.
In Houston. It's certainly been a shocking day for the passengers inside that plane.
I was just in a plane crash. Oh my God.
A final reflection on that crash landing next. What a day it has been for 76 passengers and 4 crew, all survivors of a plane crash that produced no shortage of shocking video. So tonight, before we sign off, here's one more look at Toronto's terrifying crash landing.
Continue via Delta.
So I was just watching the planes land. It was landing here, then
Okay, we continue behind on Delta, then sequence behind, then.
it just flipped at the moment just before landing.
543 ground runway 24 data golf altimeter 2993. Semi. This airplane just crashed.
It just went into flames and then it just kept dragging half runway, and it was too windy and the snow was here and there.
Get to everything, drop it. Come on. Don't take it down. Get going away. Holy. I was just in a plane crash.
Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Most people appear to be okay. We're all getting off.
What an event at Pearson International Airport today. So many shocking images and video, and so many questions remain unanswered. The big one, of course, what happened? We'll be looking for answers to that in the days and weeks to come, and of course, you will get all of that news right here on The National. Thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Erica Johnson. Take care.